Hungarian Folk Tales. The Pork Pudding. Once upon a time, there lived a man who had a pig. The pig grew very big and fat, so the man decided to slaughter it for food. By the time spring came, the man and his family had eaten everything but the pork pudding. One day, the man went to tend his vines while his wife and 3 daughters stayed at home to cook supper. The wife told the eldest daughter, "Go up into the attic and fetch the pork pudding, my girl, and we'll cook it for your father's supper." The eldest girl did as she was told and was about to cut the pork pudding down when it spoke to her. "What do you want? You won't eat me, because I'll eat you first." And with these words, it ate the girl up. The wife could not imagine why her daughter had not come back down with the pork pudding. So she sent the second eldest daughter up to the attic to fetch it. But the fat pork pudding ate the second daughter up as well. So the wife sent the youngest girl up to fetch the pork pudding. But the youngest daughter did no better than her sisters, and the bulging pork pudding ate her up too. The wife could not imagine what had happened to her 3 darling daughters. "Well, I shall see for myself," she said, and went up into the roof. When she saw the size of the enormous pork pudding, she was pleased. But when she tried to cut the pork pudding down, it ate her up in a single mouthful. That evening, the man returned home from his vines to find no one at home to cook his supper. There was no supper on the stove and not even a fire inside it. The man searched high and low for his wife and 3 daughters. He realized that he would go hungry, so he went up to the attic to fetch the pork pudding to eat for his supper. But when the man got up into the attic and tried to cut the round pork pudding down, it shouted at him like it had at the others. "You won't eat me, I'll eat you first." And without any ado, the pork pudding ate the man up. By now, the heavy pork pudding was so weighty that the string could no longer hold it. It fell from the beam, rolled down the ladder, onto the porch, and out into the garden. The little house was on a big hill, so the gigantic pork pudding rolled all the way down the street. The local folks were just coming back from the fields, and the massive pork pudding ate them all up. The roly-poly pork pudding met a herd of pigs at the edge of the village, being led by a swineherd eating bacon with a pocket knife. The preposterously large pork pudding ate all the pigs up, and then the swineherd too. But the pocket knife was open, and the swineherd cut his way out of the pork pudding, and everybody followed him out into the sunshine. If that pork pudding had not split as it did, my story would have never ended. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Princess, 3 Pigs, and 3 Birthmarks. Once upon a time, there lived a poor man who had a wife. After a time, they had saved enough money to buy a piglet. They enjoyed rearing their piglet very much, but their happiness was not complete. They still did not have a child of their own. One day the wife told her husband, "I think I might be pregnant." "Maybe you are mistaken." After a few days, the husband said to his wife, "I think the pig might be pregnant." "Maybe you are mistaken. It must have eaten too much and its belly is fat." The months passed and their son was born. The man was happy. He went to the pigsty to feed the pig, and what did he see there? 3 little piglets had also been born that day. Everyone in the house was happy. As the young boy grew up, he took the pigs to graze in the meadow at the end of the king's garden. The boy had a flute, and he liked to play it for the pigs to dance. One day, the young princess saw the pigs dancing in the meadow below. "For how much will you sell me a dancing pig?" "For no money at all if you lift your skirt to your knee." "What use is that to you? Would you rather not have a bag of gold?" But the boy said he did not want the gold. Then the princess suddenly changed her mind and lifted up her skirt to her knee. And the boy gave her a pig. When he arrived home in the evening, his father asked the boy, "Where is the missing pig?" "The wolf has taken it. He will pay the price." The boy returned to the king's garden with his pigs the very next day, where the princess saw him and asked again, "For how much money will you sell me a second dancing pig? For the first one will not dance alone." "For no money at all if you lift your skirt up to your waist." "Would you rather not have a bag of gold?" But the boy said he did not want the gold. The princess hesitated for a second and then pulled her skirt up to her waist. And the boy gave her the second pig. When the boy arrived home that night, his father asked, "Where is the second missing pig?" "The wolf has taken him. It will pay the price." On the third day, the boy went back to the same place with his last pig, where he found the princess waiting for him. "For how much will you sell me the third dancing pig, because the first 2 will not dance without the third?" "For no money at all if you lift your skirt up to your neck." Then the boy gave her the third pig along with his flute. When the boy arrived home that night, his father asked, "Where is the third missing pig?" "The wolf took it, father. It said it would pay the price." "The wolf has no money." "It has, father. It has a lot. And now I shall go and collect the price for the pigs." When the boy arrived at the palace gates, a guard asked him, "What do you want here, little boy?" "I came to the princess to get the price for my pigs." The guard went to the princess and told her that a boy had come to be paid for the 3 pigs. The princess simply said, "Fill a bag with gold and give it to him." The boy arrived home again and poured all the gold out onto a table. The boy's mother and father had never seen so much money in their lives before. The next day, the king announced that his daughter had 3 birthmarks on her body, and any man who could tell him where they were could marry her. But any man who made a mistake would be beaten for his troubles. Hearing this, the boy said, "Father, go to the market and buy me the strongest horse, the finest saddle, a beautiful suit and a silver sword, but do not bargain and pay the proper price." And off the boy set for the royal palace. As he was riding, he met a prince and a young baron, who asked the boy, "Where are you going, young knight?" "I'm riding where I like." "What is your name?" "It is what it is." "Look, let's ride with him, he knows a lot of jokes." And from then on, they called him the Joker. As they were riding, the sun set and they found themselves on the shore of a large lake. After the boy fell asleep, the prince and the baron drove a stick into the centre of the lake and fastened the boy's horse to it. When the boy woke, he saw what they had done to his horse, but he did not say a word. But he cut the hide on the legs of the other horses and rolled it up to the knee. Then he fell asleep again. When morning came, they shouted, "Get up, Joker, you are a lazy fellow. Look, your horse swam to the middle of the lake to quench its thirst." "That's right, and yours rolled their trousers up to go and save it." All 3 reached the palace the next day. There were many princes, barons and gypsies gathered, but none of them knew where the princess had her birthmarks, and each received 60 strokes of the cane for his troubles. The baron thought it best to go in with the boy, as he might find out the answers. The boy said, "Venus is shining on her delicate belly." "That's right," said the king. "Why did you say that? That was exactly what I wanted to say." "The sun and the moon radiate their beams from her bosoms." "That's right," came the reply. "That was exactly what I wanted to say," said the young baron. The courtiers began to discuss the result. Their decision was that the princess and the 3 young men should go to the same bed, and the one she turns to will be her husband. And that's what they did. The boy had a good stock of sweets and cakes in his pockets, and he ate them noisily. "What are you eating?" the baron asked. "The heel of my boot." "Take off your boot and eat its heel." So the baron tore the heel off his boot and offered a part to the princess. "Please have some, my dear." The princess could not chew the leathery heel, and she kicked the baron out of the bed. Then she turned towards the boy, who gave her sweets and cakes. The next morning the door was opened and they saw that only the boy was in the bed, while the baron hid in shame. The baron got 60 strokes for feeding the princess with the heel of his boot, and another 60 strokes because he did not know the whereabouts of her birthmarks. And so the boy married the princess, and they had a fabulous feast, and all were invited, both rich and poor. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Poor Man's Vineyard. Once upon a time, in a far-off land, there lived a poor man who had 3 sons. The poor man had a tiny vineyard, but he owned no more than that. And he guarded his vineyard as if it were gold. His sons would also take turns to stand watch at the vineyard all day and all night. One morning, it was his eldest son's turn to guard the vineyard. And the boy sat down and started to eat. While he was eating, a frog hopped out in front of him and said, "Give me a bite of bread, young man. I haven't eaten for 2 long weeks." "When pigs learn to fly," said the young fellow, and he chased the frog away. The frog left in silence and the boy fell fast asleep. When he woke again, the vineyard had been so badly ravaged that the boy was filled with fear. Next day, the middle boy went to the vineyard. He too was asked for bread by the frog, but he also chased the frog away and threw a stone at the beast. Then he lay down, fell asleep, and when he awoke, less than half the vineyard remained. "Hey," the poor man moaned, "all we have is this tiny vineyard and they can't even look after that." Then the youngest boy said, "Worry not, father, what is left will be safe now, for I shall guard it." So the youngest son went to the vineyard, sat down to eat, and the frog hopped out and asked him for bread. "But of course, here, take some." Then he broke off a crust and gave it happily to the frog. "Eat, frog, for you are one of God's creatures too. You are a good boy and you will be rewarded for your kindness in time. Now I shall give you 1 copper, 1 silver, and 1 golden rod. During the night, 3 horses will come. 1 with a copper mane, 1 with a silver mane, and 1 with a mane of gold. They will come to trample your vines, but if you strike them with these rods, they will be tamed in an instant." The night came at last and the 3 horses galloped in, kicked and neighed and threw earth up into the starry sky. But the youngest son was soon to act and hit hard at them with all 3 rods. Then the horses were tame and stood and stared like 3 simple sheep. "Don't hurt us," the horses pleaded. "But should you need help, wave the rods in the air and we will appear." Then the boy went home. But the youngest son decided not to tell his brothers and his father of what had happened that night. All 3 were surprised by the crop that was so abundant they could barely gather it in. And no one in the village had vines as rich as theirs. Time passed slowly by, and one day the king decided to erect a pine tree outside the church. Then he placed a golden sprig of rosemary atop the pine tree and told the world that he would give his daughter's hand in marriage to the first man who could snatch the golden rosemary from atop the pine tree. All manner of men tried their hand, but none could jump higher than half the height required. And when all of them had crept away in shame, a fine fellow appeared on a copper-haired horse. He wore a copper helmet so his face could not be seen. Then he spurred his horse on, leapt high in the air, snatched the golden rosemary, and rode away. The copper knight was the poor man's youngest son, of course. He went home in his tattered clothes and was sitting in the corner when his father and 2 brothers returned to the house, because they too had witnessed the joust. His brothers told the youngest one what they had seen. "I too saw what happened. But how is that so?" "Because I stood atop the fence and watched from there." His brothers were so furious that they smashed the fence to stop him watching again. The next Sunday, the king placed a golden apple on an even taller tree. Many men tried their hand, but all again in vain. But as they walked away in shame, a knight appeared aback a silver-haired horse, and the knight wore a silver helmet to hide his face. With one jump, he grabbed the golden apple and vanished. By the time his father and brothers returned, the youngest son was sitting in the corner again. They quickly regaled him of what they had seen, invisible to him from the corner. "Oh, I saw it better than both of you. How is that so? I climbed atop the pigsty roof." The brothers were so furious that they tore the pigsty down to stop him watching from there again. The third Sunday came, and the king put a golden scarf atop the tallest pine tree. And it was the poor man's youngest son who again snatched it off. He escaped and recognised again because he rode a golden-haired horse and a golden helmet to hide his face. At home, the brothers both bragged of what they had seen. "I saw it better than both of you." "How is that so? Where from?" "From atop the house roof, of course." His brothers were so furious that then they pulled the roof to pieces. Meanwhile, the king declared that the knight should appear who had taken the golden rosemary, the golden apple, and the golden scarf. But the days became weeks, the weeks months, and no one came forth. Then the king summoned all the men in the land to his palace. But the famous knight was still not among them. All of them gone, a young man appeared with hair and clothes of gleaming gold. The golden rosemary in his hat, he led his horse with the golden scarf, and he held the golden apple in his hand. Thank heaven he had appeared at last. The king was delighted, and the princess overjoyed. The wedding was held the very next day. The king gave the golden knight half of his kingdom, and they all lived happily ever after.